All right, we're about a minute past the hour here, so we'll go ahead and get started, and folks will continue trickling in here. Thank you for joining our quarterly virtual user group. In this session today, we'll start with just some intros for myself and Gary to get those that don't know us acquainted. We'll go through an agenda of what we're going to cover in today's session, and then we'll dive right into the content. So just to set the stage, a little bit of intro and background on myself and Gary. I'm one of the co-founders here at VividCharts, and I focus on our go-to-market efforts, so helping new VividCharts customers evaluate our product suite and different use cases against that, as well as our current customers with that motion. Joining me today, we also have Gary Deesh, our Chief Product Officer. Gary, if you want to jump in and say hello as well.
Hey everyone, excited to share some product stuff with you today.
Excellent. And for the more fun stuff, this is what we're going to cover today. So I'm going to start on the screen share, and we're just going to have one slide that's going to outline 3 recent customer use cases that we've seen and kind of evaluated with customers in the spirit of sharing what others and your peers are doing with the VividCharts product. So that'll be a slide to just set the stage there, and then we'll actually go into the product and do a bit more of a demo on each of those 3 use cases. From there, I'm going to turn it over to Gary, who's going to take you through our newest product release, the 1.9 release. And that'll include some slides as well as some demo of some of those capabilities. And then we'll close it out with just sharing some resources for more reporting, support, and training. And as with any webinar, feel free to leverage that chat function or the Q&A function to drop questions in as we're presenting. If it makes sense to address those live, we'll take them, but we'll definitely reserve some time at the end to make sure we get through all of the questions that get submitted. All right, so with the first section, so we'll just start by kind of outlining what 3 recent customer use cases we're going to show a little bit of a demo for. And it's going to be, to start, an executive portfolio SteerCo deck. And this is with a recent customer of ours who went live with this use case, and it was their PMO who was looking to really automate and make data-driven directly out of ServiceNow a deck that outlines project and portfolio updates for their executive steering committee. So that's where we're going to start in the demo. Then we're going to pivot over to another part of the platform on the HR side of things. And this is a newer customer. They haven't gone live with this use case yet, but we did some work with this as far as a proof of concept. So we're going to take you through a similar style presentation. It's geared towards their executive stakeholders, but are on the HR service side of things. So it'll just present a different way to look at metrics around tickets and trends. Now that would translate to the ITSM side of the platform or any service desk style reporting, but this is going to be specific to HR, what you see today. And then lastly, we'll look at a more generalized use case around summing tickets across different table types. Now, this is a use case that was originally brought to us by a healthcare organization who was evaluating VividCharts. And so the example we're going to look at is built around the ITSM part of the platform. But shortly after that, we had a financial services organization that actually just came on board as a customer who needed this same use case, but in the risk space, to identify risks, vulnerabilities, policy exceptions that were signed up to certain executive leadership. So there's applicability on that use case across the platform, and we'll talk through that in the demo. So that kind of sets the stage for what we're going to cover. I'm going to go ahead and flip the screen out of the slide deck here and over into VividCharts, and we'll start the demo portion here. All right, and as typical, we're going to start in the home page of VividCharts, and those on an older version of VividCharts, even what we're looking at here might look new and different to you. This was one of our recent product releases, so a lot of good new ways to organize the different types of reports and content that you've built with VividCharts. Even if you're on an older version and you have the old homepage, collections were prominent on that homepage experience. Collections are still in the new UI here. And so for our demo portion here, I'm going to come over to my collections tab, and we're going to go into this virtual user group collection. to walk through these three use cases. And like I said, to start here, we're going to start with this portfolio SteerCo deck. So I'll click the pencil icon, and that's going to take me into the VividCharts editor here. And the editor, most everyone on the webinar today is familiar with this interface. So we're not going to spend a ton of time in the nuts and bolts of actually creating charts in this overview. I'm going to hit on a more hidden piece of functionality that I think is underutilized in the product today to hopefully kind of seed and plant some ideas with you all on different ways you might be able to apply this for your organizations. And it might not just be in the project management space, but to set the stage for that, and it's going to be in the filter menu here, we're just going to kind of flip through the slides here and have a look at what type of content we have on the steering committee deck. So almost always on a SteerCo deck, you're going to have information for your projects and demands here. So on the first slide, we've got some charts for active projects by status, by priority, some counts up in the header here for active projects and active demands. And a really important piece to this, on this first slide, but also can be utilized across the deck, is leaving some real estate here to add some commentary and really give an executive summary or update based on what the data is showing. So the beauty of automating a report like this is so that you can spend the time giving the value added commentary on context that your executives are looking for. So, if we wanted to update this ahead of a steering committee meeting, we could just come into our template here in the editor and highlight, which of the bullets we want to make changes to and change the commentary based on what the key messages we want to get across in this month's presentation are. Now, as we work our way through the deck, you'll see, charts that you've probably seen from the chart library as you've been building in the product. But what I really want to call out is as we're working our way through, most of these charts are still pointing at the project and demand table here. But as we work our way to the back of the deck, we're starting to layer in data and charts that are sourced from tables outside of just project and demand. So in this slide, we're looking at risks by probability, by risk rank, a list of all the risks that are active today. And as we work our way through, we've got a slide for our open issues, more details on the demand pipeline, et cetera. So in this deck, we're looking at information not just from the project and demand table, it's across these different tables, but ultimately for the steering committee, we want to roll these up by portfolio and program oftentimes. And for those on that are familiar with our scaled report functionality, that's really good if you want a very specific report by each record type. So one slide deck per portfolio, one slide deck per project. But for steering committee updates, a lot of times it's more useful or valuable to have a deck that is a little bit more dynamic and can be sliced and diced on the fly. And so that's what we're going to look at here to highlight some of this capability. So what we've seen so far is the content of the deck. Where I'm going to go next is up here in this filters menu on the upper right-hand corner. If I click that to open this, you'll see that we have filters for portfolio and program here. So if I just select this and see the pencil icon get highlighted here, I'll click that, and that will show me the way this filter is configured on the deck that we're looking at. So we're looking at a drop-down filter type. There are other dynamic filters available that you might want to leverage for this type of use case. But both of these are just drop-downs that we want available to filter by a specific portfolio or set of portfolios, or for our other filter, a specific program or set of programs. So we have a drop-down selected here. We want to apply this filter against all of the charts in the slide deck, but there might be scenarios where you have charts that don't share the portfolio field. So you maybe would want to toggle this off and just select the specific charts you want to run that filter against. But in this case, every single table that we're looking at has a field that would map back to either a portfolio or program that we want to filter against. So to apply this, what we start with is selecting the parent level table that we want to run this for. So in this case, it's the project table. We've selected our field, and that's going to be the portfolio field, but you could select any field that's out of the box on the project table, or maybe custom fields that you've added that are unique to your environment. We have selected the option to make multiple value selections available in the viewer. So if we wanted to run this deck against two portfolios, we'd be able to select both. And the part that I want to draw our attention to today is these overrides at the bottom, because this is, I think, a lesser known capability, but very, very powerful within VividCharts. And the purpose of these is to allow you as a user to filter this deck and the data across all of these tables against a common field value. So in this case, we have overrides built for the issue table, the demand table, and the risk table. So what we're doing with this functionality is we're essentially telling the filter, okay, it's built for the project table, but the issue table also has a field that would be the same for portfolio, but on the issue table, it's called top portfolio. So we're telling the filter to still filter the issue data, but we're going to run it against the issue table that we have selected here. And this is the field that would be in common with the project table, our top portfolio. And the last piece that we would need to identify is which charts do we want to apply this filter override to. So in this case, we want this to apply to all of the charts that are against the issue table. So I could just search for issue in the chart table and find here's our 3 charts that are pointed at the issue table that we want to apply this override against. And so once that's built, we would click Save Override. It's already built, so I'll just cancel that out. And really quickly, I'll just open up the overrides for each of these tables. So we see for demand constructed in the same way, but you'll see the field on the demand record is actually titled just portfolio, not top portfolio. So it doesn't have to be the same field name, but the underlying value that's populated in that field needs to be in common with the parent table. So we have that built out for our charts pointed at the demand table. And then the last one here is going to be for the risk table. And as you add new content to the slide deck, you can continue to add more overrides. So if we added more tables to this that we wanted to be able to filter the deck against, we wouldn't have to rebuild the whole filter from scratch. We would just come in and add new filter overrides to align to this portfolio filter that we can run against the whole deck. And before I jump in the viewer, I'll just jump really quickly into the program filter and just scroll down, and you'll see this is constructed in the exact same way, but it's just pointed at the program field on our parent level project table. And then on the demand, risk, and issue, it's the same. We're just looking for the field that would help us identify the program it's associated with. So once we've built our filters out and we've created all of the content in our deck, how this actually comes to life, if we jump over into the viewer here, we'll launch the viewer, and it looks like I forgot to publish. So we'll jump back here. We'll publish, we'll launch into the viewer. And then just like any VividCharts report, we can toggle between the slides here, but because we've built those interactive filters with our overrides, I come to our filter menu and I have 2 filters available by portfolio and program. And I could open up the dropdown for each of these and select either an individual portfolio or multiple portfolios that we want to filter this deck against. And you could also layer program filters on here as well. So I've selected 3 different portfolios that we want to run and slice this deck by. I've applied that, and as I page through, you'll see all of the data in the deck is filtered. So not just our project data, but our risks, our demands up at the top here. And as we page through our issues, and the last slide, that's just more rich information about the demand pipeline. So that kind of summarizes the piece of functionality that you would use in VividCharts to take a SteerCo deck and make it a little bit more dynamic. Just to draw some parallels on the ITSM side of the equation here, a good parallel would be having, a service review deck that gives incident, problem, change data, but maybe slices it by assignment group, or priority level, or another common field that's shared across those different data sets. So hope this was helpful in kind of setting the stage for how you could leverage this as a PMO for these SteerCo style decks, and also kind of planting some seeds from other areas of the platform. So let's go ahead and move into our second use case then. So I'm going to click back and I'll use the back arrow, and that'll just take me back into our collection here. And the next use case we're going to look at is this AskHR metrics and trends report. So I'm going to click the pencil icon here to go into the editor. And you'll see a deck with a slightly different style applied here. And as we page through, you'll notice that the content of this deck is a lot more visual than what we were looking at in the SteerCo deck, which was very chart and data heavy. And with this use case, we had a customer that just came on board, and they were presenting this out of PowerPoint before, and that allowed them to use these types of graphics that help visualize the process behind the data and metrics more effectively. So what we did with this customer is leverage, just screenshots from that PowerPoint presentation, or you could just save the images directly from it. And we can upload those as images using the image upload function here. And we use that for, these types of graphics, these symbols over here with the targets, to just give a little bit more visualization and layering to the data points that we're seeing throughout the deck. So on this slide, we're looking at, the current performance and the year-to-date performance shown with our percentage score chart. And this is going to be run against just the HR tickets in their ServiceNow environment. Now, the other thing that's pretty prevalent throughout this deck is, not just the use of these graphics and the charts that give the real-time data, but also the use of free text to give context on what are the performance targets that we've set for this part of our business. So up here, just like we saw in the executive commentary on the PMO deck, this is, just giving information on our targets. So 80% of our AskHR cases we want resolved by the HR services assignment group. And so that gives the audience that we're presenting to more information on the metrics that they're actually seeing that are data driven. And as we page our way through the deck, you'll see this concept used in a couple different ways here. From a chart and data perspective, we're seeing more trend information. So we want to see the created versus closed trended over time, and then the case count over time, but broken up by how it was submitted. So via the portal or via email. And then up at the top, we have some text here just giving our, open case count as free text. And then the 409 here at the end, this is actually data driven. So this is coming from a chart that's directly referencing and conditioned against our case table in ServiceNow. And then up top, we're seeing some text here with some score charts embedded directly into it here. So our April case source was 24% email, and 3.1% portal. So some really interesting ways to leverage the capabilities in the editor that are not just the charts and the data side, but also using text to more effectively tell a story and state the performance targets. And as we work our way through, same concept here, but again, we're using text to state what is the metric that we're displaying here, what is our SLA, and what's our goal. And the last slide here is looking, using those same concepts, but I wanted to call out specifically the use of the survey data here, because in our data design and delivery framework for building any type of report in VividCharts or another reporting tool, when it comes to survey data in ServiceNow, that is it's an interesting table structure to kind of navigate and get to these metrics. So if I just open up one of these charts and come to the data tab, the table is called the assessment instance question table. And it takes a bit of research on the back end of ServiceNow to kind of find the exact table that you would want to use for these types of percentage score charts, and then what you would want to use for your condition criteria here. So I just wanted to call that out. And if there are, users on the webinar today that have wanted to report on their survey data in ServiceNow, but gotten stuck from a data perspective, that's something that we spent a great deal of time just understanding the data structures around. So an area we could provide support and help if you did hit roadblocks there. Okay, so the last thing we'll do on this use case here is just come into the viewer. And we don't have any filters layered against this example, but in theory, we could build those same filters with the overrides that we saw in the previous example. But what this gives us is a really nice, concise executive report out that tells a story with the data, and it's connected to the real-time data in our instance, but is also using the text and the visuals available in the editor to tell a more effective story about, how we're tracking against our performance targets. All right. So if you're out there on the audience and you're using the HR, the HR modules in ServiceNow, and this is something that's interesting to you, again, this is in our instance, easy to package up and share out, and also some data structures that we have some familiarity with. So happy to dig more into those if you're interested. All right. And then the last example that we're going to look at here is going to be around that scenario where we want to sum tickets across different tables from within ServiceNow. And this is going to be a two-part demo because in this scenario, we're going to actually leverage a Vivid sheet, which I imagine some of you on the webinar have some experience or have seen our posts on Vivid Sheets, maybe some keyboard experience here. But the purpose of a Vivid sheet is really to help you stage data for reporting purposes that could just be a tabular report that you want in a spreadsheet format like we're looking at here, or we might want to stage some data to include in a more executive style presentation like we saw with the first two use cases. So in this example here, we have a Vivid sheet staged, and again, this is looking at ITSM data. So our column here in column A is just breaking down the different ticket types by our assignment groups in the instance. But the columns as we move from left to right are actually going to be values that we're pulling from different tables in the ServiceNow environment. So we have catalog tasks here, change requests, change tasks, incidents, incident tasks, and then a total count of the tasks. And what Vivid Sheets can be really useful here for is to allow you from within each of these cells to get a count of the catalog tasks that are just, assigned to this specific assignment group, and do the same thing for each of these tables, and then sum those up using the ticket count column here to give us a total of tickets across all of these different tables that are assigned to the same team. So in this example, we have a sum calculation that we're running in the Vivid sheet here, and we're just summing up the values for this assignment group across these different columns. And I'm not going to get into the details of how we're leveraging these reference cells over here on the right-hand side of the screen. But what I can tell you is, this is a really useful way to structure a Vivid sheet. And we have videos in more detail out on our YouTube that Gary's put together on this. But what having this staged on the right-hand side of the screen allows you to do is really easily copy and paste the queries from this cell down the column. So if we wanted to, just paste down the column here, we're referencing these conditions over here on the right-hand side of the sheet to embed in our queries for each of these cells to give us the count just for this assignment group and just for this table, the catalog task table. So with what we've done so far, we have a nice summary of the data in our Vivid sheet here, but often the next step is to have this in a more presentable format for our executive team. So this wasn't from our latest release, but a release in the late summer, we added this style table functionality to where we can leverage this to essentially select a portion of the cells from that Vivid sheet to style up and include in a slide deck in VividCharts. So for this example, you can see I'm looking at cell A1 through G10 here, and I have just done some light style in here. So I can style at the cell level. I can select full columns to, give it bold and make it center aligned, etc. Or, I can just use my keys here and use the shift keys to select specific cells together to do styling on the right-hand side. So you could say this is where we kind of pretty up the data set in this style table format. But once we've done that, we would just save this. We could return to the sheet. And once we jump back over into VividCharts here, I'll go into our slide deck where we've added this to a similar style executive presentation here. So if I jump to slide 2 of this deck, you'll see this is the style table that we just created and did the styling for in Vivid Sheets. And we've just dropped that as a chart in our editor here. And while that's already added, just to give you a sense here, I'll open up the data menu here. To create these, it's very similar in terms of the flow for creating a new chart. You would just come to your charts menu and select style table as your chart. You would select your Vivid sheet that you want to pull the style table from. So in this case, it's the summing tickets from different table sheet. And then here's my tickets by team style table that we were just looking at in Vivid Sheets. And so just like with the other use cases, once we have this prepped and ready, we could publish this. We'll save it. We'll publish. And we'll come into the viewer. And just like with any of our decks, we have this available in real time. This is wired up to the refresh for the slide deck itself. So if I clicked refresh, it's going to refresh every single metric in this table and give us fully real-time data to report. All right. So that takes you through the 3 use cases we wanted to just kind of share that came onto our radar recently from current customers as well as some of our newer customers. So with that, Gary, I'm going to stop my screen share and pass it over to you to talk about the new release.
Thank you, Rob. Let me share my screen here. Okay, let me go over to the slide deck. So some of the things that Rob shared in his demo, I'm gonna go through exactly what you were looking at. He kind of showed you the home screen, but I think there are a couple other things there that I'm gonna specifically point out that we had in this last release that we have coming. After I go through kind of this last release and some of the highlights, or we call them big rocks, so like the big items from the release, I'll show you a roadmap to give you a sense of what we're working on right now and kind of what we look forward to sharing over the next few months as far as both our applications and releases. I first want to point out our YouTube channel. So one thing we've done with all of our releases, or the last 3 releases, is had a whole playlist series for each release where we go through some of these new additions to the product and try to create little bite-sized videos to demo them. So, I would encourage you to go to our YouTube channel and subscribe, and so you can get those videos as we put them out. And we're trying to do better about, putting those materials out with the release so they're ready to go when the new release comes out. Okay, so let's get into the demo here. I'm going to go into VividCharts from my home. Now, one thing I do want to point out is I currently am, if I go over here and click on it, I'm currently, the roles I have here are the builder role and the VividCharts admin role. I have a refresher role also. So, there are 5 different roles possible in VividCharts. And so I just want to call out that, the roles I have, because if you don't have the builder role or the VividCharts admin role, the options over here are going to be a little bit different. And so like your viewers without the builder role wouldn't have the skilled reports option, they wouldn't have the search option, and they wouldn't have the admin panel option. So I just want to call that out in case you see something different if you've logged in, possibly. Okay, so Rob already went over this. In the 1.9 release, one of the real kind of focuses of the release was to improve the experiences customers had and then their customers in finding reports that have been built and sharing reports that they've been built. So Rob just went through a few really good examples of spending time and effort building really sophisticated reports. And some things that we've heard from customers is, finding reports is hard, or once you share them with your stakeholders, it's harder for stakeholders to access them. So we really wanted to help customers surface reports that they spent all this time building for their stakeholders. And we've done that in multiple ways that I'm going to go through here. I won't go through each one of these. I think they're a little bit self-explanatory, and Rob did share them a little bit. But my reports are just everything that I've built. So if you look at Creator, it's all me. One thing we did add here is the type. So reports have different types. So we have snapshot reports and filterable decks and slide decks. I'll explain what a snapshot report is because that's new in this release also. Shared with me is really nice. And this is the one thing that we had a lot of people come to us and say, look, I know this report was shared to me by a colleague previously. I can't access it. I can't find it. It's hard to find. So we now have this shared with me. So like in this case, Bella shared this report incident heat map with me. It's easy for me to find that in the future when I need to go find it. We've always had favorites, but it's now its own visual or its own screen. So it's easier to find. And like Rob mentioned, collections were the way to organize things in the past. We didn't get rid of them. We just gave them their own screen and kind of added the others here. So like Rob, I created a collection for this demo, so I'm going to go into that first. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is go through our email notifications. So in the last release, we allowed people to send notifications when you shared a report with them. But there's other time, like that was the only time you could share the report via email was when, or a notification is when you shared the report. What if you wanted the report to go out every Monday, every month on the 3rd, or, something like that? We built that into the product this time. And so I'm going to go into this view that I have. Actually, that's in the viewer. Let me go into the editor. So 2 other things. When you hover over on the new interface here, when you hover over the report, you'll see that the eye icon is highlighted. If you just click anywhere on the report, you're going to go into the viewer. If you want to go in the editor, you have to go directly over the pencil icon. So we're going to go into that. Okay, so I have a pretty simple report here. It's just a single incident chart, things by category, but I do want to share this via email. And I want to schedule this so it goes out on a regular basis. You notice that we have this email notifications up here now. If I go into that, I could still do an on-demand and share it with someone just in the moment, but I actually want to schedule this to go out, on a consistent basis. I'm going to turn that on, and then I can share it with users. I could share it with groups, and then I can select the time. Here's a few things that I think are important to understand about this because it may look like it isn't working. If I go here and there's nothing that pops up in users, or if I go in here, there's nothing that pops up in groups, it's because this report hasn't been shared with anyone yet. And I think maybe your first instinct would be, like the list of users isn't coming up as it should. We wanted to make sure that if you're sending emails to people, that they can actually view the report. So in this case, no one's available to share it with or to schedule the notification with because I haven't actually shared it with anyone. So the first step here is I am going to go up here and I'll share this report, and I'll just share it with Bob, and I'll share it with Bella. So I got my two coworkers. I could go ahead and notify them through email there to say I shared it with them. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'll send that out. Okay. So now Bob and Bella are capable of seeing this report. Now I can go ahead and say, okay, now I want them to also receive this report every Monday. So I'll go ahead and now they're users I can share with. I'll go ahead and click on that. I'll just say weekly, and we'll just say what day of the week I want it to go on Monday. Now, one thing that is also true about this is the time of day that this email goes out is sent through this property down here. So all the emails go out at the same time every day based on that property. So I'll hit save and schedule, and now Bob and Bella have that coming to their email box, every Monday at that time. Okay, I want to go back out here because there's one other thing about this. We'll go into collections. We'll go back out here. Okay, so let's go into this email notifications that's not published. I'll go back into the editor. Again, remember I said we want to make sure that you can only send emails of reports that the person receiving the email could actually look at, so that they're not getting links to dead reports in their email. We want to try to make that experience good for your stakeholders so they're getting what you expect them to get. So this report is not published. I haven't published it yet. And so when I go into the email notifications, I kind of get this message saying, hey, you need to go publish this before we can actually schedule it. That's just to avoid the issue of, someone clicking on a link in the email and getting the not published report screen in the application. So we've tried to make it not only simple to schedule, but also try to protect, users from scheduling reports that would cause a bad experience for the stakeholders receiving the reports, to make it as simple as we could there. Okay, let's go back out here. One thing that we have done is really improved the capabilities of our downloading. So we know that a lot of customers do send, links to their reports, and people go into the viewer to review them. But we also know sometimes we'll just go into our first call report here and we'll go into the viewer. Sometimes people want to export the report in different formats, whether it be PDF or PowerPoint, in order to send that file to a customer or one of their stakeholders. So in this case, some of the things we've had is just like we need to improve the quality, and we needed different options for that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go here and show you a couple of the new options we have. If you go into download, we now have, we have PDF and PowerPoint like we've always had, but we now have an image file. Now, the request that we had was people wanted images so they can actually just attach the images to an email and have the report show up right directly in the email. And so that's one reason why we did the PNG output. We also give people the ability to choose kind of a good, better, best. And this is on the resolution of the export. I would say probably for most times, good and better is fine. But if you have a really intense report, you might want to choose best. The only real I guess downside to this is it's going to take a little bit longer to download, and the file size is going to be a little bit bigger just because the resolution goes up. But you now have that option. A couple other settings here, and I'll demonstrate what those are. So when you go in here, if you have a filtered report, actually, let me just go demo that. Let's go back here. Let's go to one of my filterable decks here. Okay, so Rob showed you how to build filters in his demo. I'm going to go ahead and just filter this. I got categories, and we're just going to select databases. Okay, So this is a filtered report. This is only data of open tickets of the incidents by day of the week. And if I click on that, I can see it's only for the database category. But notice that you have this icon here. A couple things here is we've had, customers say that when they go to download this, they would prefer that the icons be removed so that they didn't have this little icon on all their charts. So now you can turn that off. I'll go ahead and select. Let's go ahead and select PowerPoint. We'll select best and download. And then after the download comes out, you'll see, I'll go ahead and open that up. But you'll see that the icon's been removed. Might take PowerPoint longer than. Another thing why that's opening up that I'll share. Here we go. Yeah. So now you can see it's the filtered report. The data is filtered, but you don't have all these icons. So one of the things that customers had was, they had 8 or 9 different charts on the slide or the export, and they had 8 or 9 different icons all over, and they didn't necessarily like that aesthetic. So now you have the ability to turn that off. One other thing here is well, let me open that back up. Go to downloads. Let's see. We'll open that back up here. One thing that you do, if I had multiple charts on this in PowerPoint, if you've done this before, each chart becomes its own object. So you can move text around, you can move charts around. And sometimes that's good because you want to, inside of PowerPoint, you actually want to do some, manipulating of the slide. But there are some drawbacks to that. Sometimes the visual drawing of the charts turns out to be not quite exactly what the viewer looks like because of the drawing of each object. So now one of the abilities that you have in the download, and I'll tell you one of the big ones. If you have labels that overlap like the chart border, when we draw every chart separate as an object on the PowerPoint, some of those labels will get cut off. And so we hear that as a problem from customers. So now if you come in here and you would choose that option, we'll just say good. And let's say you can use this download flattened slides. What that's going to do is you're going to get a much more one-to-one replication of what's in the viewer because we're just taking essentially a picture of the whole slide and putting it onto the PowerPoint slide. What that does remove is your ability to, move each of the charts around on the PowerPoint slide. So it's a little bit of your use case and what you need, but that's what the flatten download slides option does. Okay, we got a couple other things here as far as sharing that I think are pretty critical and valuable here. Okay, so if we go back out into our list here, I have this slide deck and I have the snapshot report. So I want to explain what a snapshot report is. Now the functionality is mostly rebranded from what we used to call the report generator, but I think report generator was confusing and people didn't fully understand exactly what was happening. Now, a snapshot report is exactly what you think it is. It's a snapshot of that state and status of this report at that time and place. So here's one that's created. You can see I can pull it up and it functions just like any other report. It's the database incidents that was snapshotted today. So let's go look and see how we create that. If we have a filterable report, so something that has filters that are available on it, when I open in the viewer, it's going to ask you, do you want to create a snapshot or do you want to view the current report? In this case, let's go ahead and create the current or go back out to the current report because here I also have the option to see and create a snapshot report from here. So here, I just want to show you how this works. If I run filters here and have hardware, we can see the report's filtered and I could download it right now. But what I want to do is I want to capture a snapshot of this. So let's go ahead and hit snapshot reports. We'll just say, let's see, we'll just say hardware incidents by day of week. Let's say November 19th. Okay. Now, this is the report that I want to use to create my snapshot, which is the one that I'm on up here. You have the ability to create a temporary report, or in this case, I want to keep it forever. So I'm going to say permanent. A temporary report would be a filtered report and it lasts for 24 hours and then is removed. But let's go ahead and keep it permanent. I'm going to hit select and we'll say we said it was hardware, and I'll hit create report. Now what happened is in the background, we went and created a report using those filters. So let's go ahead and go view all of our snapshots. And now you can see here's that one that I just created. It's the snapshot of the hardware incidents. So when I go here, I now have that pre-filtered report that is going to be, this time and place that this data won't be updated. So anytime I come to this report, it will be as the data was for November 19th. So I think this was a pretty underutilized feature in our previous iteration of it, but we wanted to clear up the experience and rename it Snapshot so that it reflected a little bit more of the feature and what you were getting with this feature. Okay, one more thing. If you create one more way of delivering reports that is kind of something that's been there, but we really empowered the use case by increasing the features available. And that's what we call loops. So for loops, if I have a slide deck, so I'm going to go back, I have a slide deck here, and this one's the first call resolution. So I'm going to go back into that one. Because I'm the editor of this, I have this gear icon up here. Now, sometimes you might have a digital dashboard. You might have an office space where you have a screen on the TV, or you might have a co-working space where you have a TV up, or some sort of shared digital signage where you want these reports to be displayed. You want them cycling through the slides, and you also want the data updating. So loops, we increase the capabilities here to enable that. So now you have the ability to set the rotation, which is one thing we had available. What we added was the ability for the data to update. So if I turn this loop on and I say update every minute it will go and re-query the data and update the slides for that digital signage. But in order for this thing to get used as a loop, I need to click and turn on that loop behavior. So now anytime someone goes to, if I would go and share this link out, anytime someone would go to this report, it would be in the loop mode and it would be rotating every 30 seconds and the data would be updating every minute. So notice that when it's in this mode, I don't have the ability to navigate the slides manually. The slide kind of menu up here is turned off also. And as you can see, it just automatically every 30 seconds switches slides. So again, just another way that we've heard customers really want to, get value out of their reports. They're spending all this time designing and parsing the data. They want to have great experiences for their stakeholders to consume these reports in various ways. I do want to go back out here. So there's a few other things here that I just want to call out. If you're a builder, again, just thinking about the ability to find and share reports that exist, builders do have this search capability. So if you go into search, we've changed and improved the search capabilities. It's pretty straightforward, but I will say we just have made it a much better experience in giving you a lot better ways to surface reports that you're looking for. One thing that I will call out is you can search for reports that you can edit, but you can also search for, now that we have the scheduled notifications, one way to manage that is if you just go in here and search, we can see that we have 2 reports that have scheduled notifications set up so that you can kind of monitor and see what are all the scheduled emails going out with the reports that you have. Again, this search capabilities is only available for builders. And one of the reasons why is when you search, some of these things will surface. Like even if I didn't have access to it, it would give me the title. It would say no access, but it would still surface the report. And so that's one reason why it's only available to people with the builder role. So I think I will stop there with the demo because, again, most of this stuff is around getting the reports that you've spent a lot of time building, a lot of effort in parsing with the data and the design. And again, that third step in our 3Ds is always delivery. And so this last effort in the 1.9 release was really focused around that. Okay, so I'm going to go back out to my slides because I do want to give you a little bit of sneak peek into what we got coming up. This is what I'm going to say. This is maybe my own safe harbor kind of description here. If you've been in any ServiceNow demo, you've seen these, but this is our roadmap. These are things that we're actively building, actively testing, and working on. But I can't promise that everything you will see on this roadmap is going to happen in the next month or next near term. So with that, I just do want to show you kind of this roadmap. So again, we just went through the 1.9 release that came out in October. We have had a patch release since then. So 1.9.1 is also out if you're looking for it in the store. We do have anticipated our Vivid Sheets 1.3.0 release. And so that's what we're working on currently right now. So let me just kind of give you an idea of what to think about with the Vivid Sheets. There's 2 things. One is Rob shared the styled tables with you. One of the things that we did in the last release was made those available to workspaces. So we're enhancing that feature. We know that sometimes you want assets that you built in Vivid Sheets or VividCharts to be put into your workspaces, your project workspaces, your CSMs, things like that. So we enhanced some of those capabilities, but the big thing with the next Vivid Sheets enhancement is around our what we call Vivid Functions. Vivid Functions, if you use Vivid Sheets, you could see how you get counts and you can get sums and things like that using queries. We've had people come to us and say they have very specific functions in Excel, for example, that they want to see in Vivid Sheets. And so we have worked really hard to not put every function you see in Excel into Vivid Sheets, but more of a way to allow you to put in capabilities and calculations that you need in your instance into the product. So I'm going to leave it there. I know that is a very high level look at it, but we have some pretty exciting demos and stuff coming up. What I will say is if you want to see earlier demos of that, then we're putting out in the public. Maybe just send a message in the chat here or, email me your name and just say you'd like to be included in the early demo. My email is just garydeach@vividcharts.com. I'll be happy to send you a personal invite to some of our early demos. Okay, moving on to VividCharts, we have a bunch of workspace embedding thoughts being done right now. Again, customers right now go to VividCharts and we improved the home screen so you can find your assets. But we also hear people saying, hey, I would be helpful if we could get these reports, for example, all our project status reports surfaced in our project status workspace. And so we are building some custom components that are going to be able to be added to those workspaces and set up in those workspaces so you can get those reports inside of those places where your stakeholders are actively working. And so that will be coming in the near future. We have a bunch of just platform enhancements that, we continue to fix as customers bring them our way. The other thing that we are currently working on is a lot of our charts. Our chart library is very extensive. At the moment, I think we're at 78 custom charts that are very specific to ServiceNow data and visualizing ServiceNow data. When we build all those charts, we built them and got them out there. But in some cases, the default settings aren't. You can always get to a best practice and the best visual, because we offer so much ability to mold the chart to the way you want it. But what we are going through right now is trying to make sure that the charts are just default settings with best practices. And so it comes out of the box not only capable of being styled in the best practice way, but comes out of the box with the best practice already enabled, potentially to help customers that aren't very confident in the best practice for certain charts, but also maybe to speed up some of the building time that people have. And so we're going through the chart library currently. So that is what we are currently working on and delivering and building with our engineering team right now. I got just one more minute or so, so I'm just going to kind of hurry and talk about what is coming up next. Now, when we say shaping and discovering, what that means is we are actively talking to customers about different things we can do. We're building prototypes, and we're just trying to discover and shape up requirements for things that will be coming in the future. One of those things is, again, continuing in this workspace embedding. So this workspace embedding that I talk about, we're working on right now is maybe a generic component that can go all places, but we know that there are in different workspaces very specific things that customers may want. And so we're talking to people about that. Also, we're working on this asset packager. So currently, if you build something in your dev instance, you can package it, and we have ways to help you package it to put it into your production instance, but we want to make that experience better. So we're talking to customers, we're rethinking that experience completely right now. The other thing that we are working on is the things that Rob and I have showed you today. Most of it was in the slide deck form factor. We are, talking to customers and going through the experience of what would it look like, or what are customers wanting if it doesn't have that slide deck feel. You can build non-slide deck things in VividCharts today, but kind of the immediate out of the box experience is that slide deck form factor. So we have some prototypes built. Again, if you want to see what those prototypes are, I'm more than happy to have discussions with anyone to share and show and kind of get your feedback on what those are. In the future, so this is future shaping, we still have this concept of Vivid Sheets having a cell snapshot. So think of snapshot reports, but what if we were snapshotting values in your cells of your Vivid Sheets? And so we have that on the list. So again, that's our roadmap right now. Happy to have private discussions if people want to, ping me and have discussions on any of those things. So that was right up to the limit, Rob. So I don't know if we have any questions, or if we want to take questions offline. I'll hand it back over to you.
Awesome. Well, we don't have any in the Q&A, but if anyone does have any, feel free to submit those. Yeah, Gary pulled up, just kind of what's next. And these are more resources available to you out there. I'm just going to actually, I'll share my screen and show you how to get to these.
Yeah, let me stop sharing.
Just as far as things that you saw today that might be interesting for you, if you want to schedule some time, like Gary said, you can send us direct messages and we can get that scheduled. You can also just come to our website and use this Let's Talk function in the top right and schedule directly with us there. And some of the resources that were on the slide that are really great for our customers and prospects to get a sense of would live in the resources tab up here. So we've got case studies, guides, past webinars that are recorded and available to you, and then a live examples section that we call our Vivid Hub that includes some demo examples and kind of inspiration of things that you might want to build with VividCharts. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing here, and we'll close things out since we don't have any questions in the chat here. But thank you all for joining today's virtual user group, and see you next time.